Good day, everyone. Before we begin our discussions on abuse and violence, it is important to recognize that this issue affect individuals, families, and communities across all ages, cultures, and socioeconomic backgrounds. Abuse and violence can take many forms: physical, emotional, sexual, psychological, and neglect, and often occurs in situations where power, control, and vulnerability are present. In our healthcare and nursing practice, understanding this concept is crucial because victims may not openly disclose their experiences, and the effects can be long lasting on both physical and mental health. As we start this topic, we will focus on recognizing the signs of abuse and violence, understanding their impact, and identifying the vital role of nurses in prevention, assessment, interventions, and advocacy for safety and healing. There are different types of crises. Crises can be classified into the different types based on their cause. Number one, we have your maturational or developmental crisis occurs during the normal life transitions, such as your adolescent, marriage, parenthoods, or retirement, when an individual must adapt to new roles and responsibilities. So that is maturational or developmental crisis. Another one, we have your situational crisis arises from sudden, unexpected events such as illness, loss of loved one, accident, or job loss, which overwhelm a person's usual coping abilities. So that is the second one. And then the third one, we have your social crisis, affects a large group or community and result from events like natural disaster, pandemics, war, or economic collapse, disrupting social system and support networks. So these are the types of crisis. We have the phases of crisis. A crisis typically progresses through several phases. The denial or the initial reaction phase is marked by shock, disbelief, or refusal to accept the reality of the situations. This is followed by increased tensions, during which the persons become aware of the crisis but continues to perform activities of daily living while experiencing rising anxiety and stress. Next one, in the disorganization phase, the individuals becomes overwhelmed and preoccupied with the crisis, leading to difficulty or inability to carry out activity daily living. And finally, during the attempts to reorganize phase, the person begins to mobilize previous coping mechanism, seek help, and develop new ways to adapt and regain control. So these are the phases of a crisis. Let's start with the battered wife syndrome. Battered wife syndrome refers to a cycle of domestic violence which a wife is repeatedly subjected to physical abuse, humiliations, and other forms of aggressions by her husband. So this cycle often involves period of tension building, acute violence, and temporary calm, making it difficult for the woman to leave the abusive relationship. Low self-esteem is commonly seen among abusive men, which may contribute to their need to exert control and dominance over their partner. On the other hand, dependence is frequently observed in abused women as emotional, financial, or psychological reliance on the partner can make it harder to escape the abusive situations. Abusive husband often share common characteristics. Many come from violent families where aggressive behavior was learned and normalized during the childhood. They're often immature, dependent, and non-assertive, relying on aggression as a way to manage stress or feelings they cannot express appropriately. Additionally, they tend to have the strong feelings of inadequacy, which may lead them to use of violence to feel powerful or in control within the relationship. These are the phases of battered wife syndrome. We have battered wife syndrome follows a repetitive cycle of violence with the three distinct phases. The tension building phases involves minor battering incidents, verbal abuse, and increasing anger, causing the wife to feel anxious and to attempt to avoid triggering further violence. This is followed by your acute battering incident, which is the most dangerous phase and involves a more serious and uncontrollable form of physical or emotional abuse. After this, the aftermath or honeymoon stage occurs, during which the husband may become loving, apologetic, and remorseful, giving the wife hope that abuse will not happen again. So this phase often reinforces the cycle by making it harder for the woman to leave the relationship. So the priority in the care of the battered wife, the top priority here is caring for a battered wife is the provision of shelter as an immediate safety is essential. Ensuring access to a safe place protects the woman from further harm and provide an environment where physical injuries, emotional trauma, and future planning can be addressed. So shelter also allows healthcare providers and support agencies to offer counseling, legal assistance, and resources to help the woman regain safety, confidence, and independence. Next one, we have your child abuse. Child abuse occurs when an older adult or authority figure take advantage of their power over a younger child, resulting in harm or the risk of harm. This abuse can be intentional and may affect the child's physical, emotional, or psychological well-being. Other one, we have your violence. Refers to the use of force that may cause injury, damage, or trauma to other persons. In the context of child abuse, violence often involves physical actions intended to control or punish the child. And then we have your neglect. Neglect is the failure to provide basic needs essential for the child growth and development, such as adequate food, shelter, clothing, healthcare, education, and supervisions. Although it may not involve direct physical harm, neglect can have serious long-term effects on the child's physical and emotional health. And then the last one, we have the physical abuse, is the intentional infliction of pain or injury on a child, including hitting, burning, shaking, or other actions that may cause bodily harm. So this form of abuse is often the most visible and may result in bruises, fractures, or other physical injuries. Emotional abuse is a form of maltreatment that involves repeated insult, humiliations, threats, or behavior that undermine a person's confidence and self-worth. It may include constant criticism, rejections, intimidations, or blaming, which can make individuals feel worthless, unloved, or fearful. Although emotional abuse does not leave visible physical injuries, it can cause long-lasting psychological harm, affecting the emotional development, self-esteem, and the ability to form healthy relationships, especially in children. This statement describes the common characteristic of individuals who commit abuse, especially towards children or family members. Many abusers come from the violent families and they have experienced abuse themselves during the childhood, leading them to repeat learned patterns of behavior. So they often have inadequate parenting skills, making it difficult for them to manage stress, discipline appropriately, or respond to a child's need. Abusers are frequently socially isolated because they do not trust or others or lack healthy support system. They tend to be emotionally immature, reacting impulsively rather than handling problems in a mature way. Additionally, they may have a negative attitudes towards the management or intervention for abuse, often denying the problem or resisting help, which further perpetuates abusive behaviors. These signs are commonly seen in the victims of abuse, particularly in children. Serious injuries in a various stages of healing suggest repeated harm over time rather than a single incident or accidents. Hair of varying lengths may indicate neglect or force, cutting, and lack of proper care. Emotional and behavioral changes are also common, such as apathy, where the child shows little interest or emotional response, and depressions, which may present as sadness, withdrawal, or loss of interest in activities. Victims of abuse often have the low self-esteem, feeling worthless or blaming themselves for the abuse they experience. Together, these physical and emotional signs raise strong concern for ongoing abuse and require immediate assessment and interventions. Abuse refers to the wrongful use of power and the maltreatment of another person, causing harm or suffering. The perpetrator is usually someone the victim knows, such as family members, spouse, partner, caregivers, or trusted individuals, which often makes the abuse more difficult to recognize and report. Abuse can affect individuals across the lifespan, including the spouses or intimate partners, children, and elderly parents, and may occur in homes, institutions, or communities. The types of injuries resulting from abuse can be physical, such as bruises, fractures, burns, or other bodily harm, and psychological, including the fear, anxiety, depressions, trauma, and low self-esteem. These injuries may be visible or hidden and often occur repeatedly over time. So the effects of survivor can be long-lasting, impacting the emotional well-being, relationship, self-worth, and overall quality of life. Survivor may struggle with trust, mental health problems, and coping difficulties, emphasizing the needs for early identification, protections, and supportive interventions. Family violence includes a range of abusive behavior within the family unit, such as spouse battering, neglect, or physical, emotional, or sexual abuse of children, elder abuse, and marital rape. These acts often occurs in a private settings and can have serious, long-lasting effects on all family members involved. Common characteristics of family violence include social isolation, where the family or victim has limited contact with others, making it easier for abuse to occur unnoticed. There is an open abuse of power and control, with the perpetrator using intimidations, threat, or manipulation to dominate the victims. Alcohol and other drug abuse are frequently associated with family violence, such as substance use can increase aggressions and reduce impulse control. Another important factor is the intergenerational transmission process, meaning that individuals who grow up in abusive households are at higher risk of becoming perpetrator or victims of violence themselves, perpetuating the cycle across generations. Domestic violence affects families across all ages, ethnicities, races, religions, socioeconomic statuses, and sexual orientations, demonstrating that is widespread public health concern. Certain groups, such as battered immigration women, are particular risks due to additional vulnerabilities. These women often face legal, social, and economic challenges that differ from those of U.S. citizens, including the limited knowledge of their rights, fear of deportations, language barrier, lack of social supports, and restricted access to resources or services. So these factors can make it all more difficult for immigrant women to seek help, escape abusive situations, or obtain protections, highlighting the need for culturally sensitive interventions and support system. Domestic violence occurs when one person mistreats or misuses another within an emotional intimate relationship, using power and control to dominate the partner. It can take several forms. Psychological or emotional abuse may be overt, such as verbal threats and insults, or subtle, like manipulations and humiliations. Physical abuse includes behavior such as shoving, pushing, battering, or choking. Sexual abuse involves coerced sexual acts, assault during sexual relations, or rape. Statistics shows that the rates of domestic violence are higher among women and tend to increase during pregnancy, placing both mother and child at risk. So domestic violence also occurs in same-sex relationship with prevalence rates similar to heterosexual couples. However, victims in this relationship often have fewer legal protections and social support, which can make it more difficult to seek help or escape abusive situations. So, understanding the multiple forms and contexts of domestic violence is essential for effective assessment, interventions, and advocacy. In many cases of domestic abuse, the husband is the primary perpetrator against the wife. The abuser often views the wife as his property, reflecting strong feelings of inadequacy, low self-esteem, and poor problem-solving and social skills. Violence and abusive behavior tend to increase whenever the wife shows signs of independence or challenges the abuser's control. On the other hand, abused women who remain in the relationship often exhibit a dependency trait, relying emotionally, financially, or socially on their husband, which can make it difficult for them to leave despite ongoing abuse. So this combination of abuser characteristic and victim dependency contributes to the continuations of the abusive cycles. The cycle of abuse and violence is a recurring pattern often seen in abusive relationship. It typically begins with a violent episode during which the abuser may physically, emotionally, or sexually harm the victim. This is followed by the honeymoon period where the abuser may apologize, show affections, and promise the violence will not happen again, giving the victim hope and temporarily restoring the peace. Over time, tension begins to build again with increasing irritability, arguments, and controlling behavior from the abuser. If the cycles continues unchecked, it leads to another violent episode, repeating the cycle. So, understanding this pattern help nurses and caregivers recognize the stages of abuse and provide timely interventions and support to break the cycle. Victim abuse do not always seek help directly for the abuse itself and may instead present for the treatment of others' physically or psychological conditions, such as injuries, chronic pain, depression, or anxiety. It is important for the nurse and healthcare provider to routinely ask all the clients if they feel safe in their home or relationship. Careful, non-judgmental questions about safely can help identify those at risk, uncover the hidden abuse, and open the door. Open the door for support and intervention. So early assessment is crucial in protecting the victim, preventing further harm, and connecting them with appropriate resources. Question: is the following statement true or false? The honeymoon period of violence often occurs before the first episode of violence. What's your answer? It should be false. The honeymoon period occurs after an episode of violence. This is the period in which the abuser expresses regret and then apologizes and promises it will never happen again. Next one. Treatment and intervention for domestic violence focus on ensuring the safety, providing support, and addressing the psychological impact on victims. Legal measures includes enforcing the law related to domestic violence, which may involve the arrest of perpetrators, as well as obtaining restraining or protection orders to prevent further contact. Recognitions and management of stalking behavior are also important to protect the victim. Victim may access shelter for immediate safety and temporary housing. Psychological interventions include individual psychotherapy or counseling, group therapy, and participation in support or self-help groups which provide emotional support, coping strategies, and empowerment. And many victims also benefit from treatment for post-traumatic stress disorder or other trauma-related mental health conditions, helping them process the abuse, rebuild the self-esteem, and regain a sense of control over their lives. Child abuse refers to the intentional injury or harm inflicted on a child by a caregiver or adult and can take several forms, including physical abuse, which may causing injuries through hitting, burning, shaking, or other harmful actions. Neglect occurs when a caregiver fails to prevent harm or does not provide adequate physical or emotional care, supervision, or basic needs such as food, shelter, or medical attentions. Abandonment is another form where the child is left without care or protections. Sexual abuse or assault involves any sexual activity imposed on a child, while overt torture or maiming represent extreme forms of intentional harm. So recognizing these signs is crucial for timely interventions to ensure the safety and well-being of the child. Abusive parents often display minimal parenting knowledge and skills, making it difficult for them to provide proper guidance, care, and discipline. They may be emotionally immature and needy, sometimes unable to meet their own emotional or physical needs, which affects their ability to care for their children. Many of these parents view children as a property rather than individual with rights and feelings, leading to controlling or punitive behavior. The cycle of family violence is common, as adults often raise children the same way they were raised, repeating patterns of abuse. Adults who were victims of abuse themselves are the higher risk of becoming perpetrators, perpetuating the cycle of violence across the generations. Recognizing these characteristics help the healthcare provider and social worker identify at-risk families and intervene early. Detections and accurate identifications are the first and most critical step in addressing the child abuse. Nurses should report any suspected abuse if they not uh, if they are not certain that abuse has occurred, because early reporting can prevent further harm. The child's safety and well-being must always be the top priority in any interventions. Treatment often includes psychiatric evaluation to assess the child's emotional and psychological states, and therapy may be necessary over a significant period with the approach tailored to the child's age and development level. Social services involvement is essential to provide protection, resources, and monitoring, while family therapy or interventions may require for parents to address abusive behavior, improve parenting skills, and reduce the risk of reoccurrence. Early identifications, reporting, and coordinated multidisciplinary approach are key to ensuring the child's safety and long-term recovery. Maltreatment of older adults refers to the abuse, neglect, or exploitations of individuals typically over the age of 65, open by the caregivers or family members. Forms of maltreatment include physical, sexual, and psychological abuse as well as neglect, which can involve self-neglect when the older adult is unable or unwilling to care for themselves. Financial exploitations and denial of adequate medical treatment are also common forms of abuse. Research estimates that about 10% of the populations over age of 65 experiences some form of abuse by the caregivers, with the 60% to 65% of victims being women. Recognizing and addressing elder abuse is essential to protect vulnerable adults, ensure their safety, and preserve their dignity and well-being. Elder abuse is most committed by someone in a caretaker role or someone on whom the older adults depends for their daily needs, such as family members, a spouse, or hired caregiver. Many cases involves one older spouse caring for another, when stress, frustration, or lack of resources can contribute to abusive behavior. Abuse can also occur in senior living facilities where bullying or mistreatment may happen between the residents. Older adults are often reluctant to report abuse due to the desire to protect family members, fear of retaliations, or concern about losing essential support or care. The clinical picture of abuse varies depending on the type and severity of abuse. Physical abuse may present as bruises, fracture, or unexplained injuries. Neglect may manifest as malnutrition, poor hygiene, or untreated medical conditions, and psychological abuse may lead to depression, anxiety, or withdrawal. Awareness of the dynamic is critical for early detections, intervention, and protections of vulnerable elders. Assessment of older abuse involves identifying the possible indicators of mistreatment, neglect, or exploitations. This may include physical signs such as bruises or injuries, signs of malnutrition or poor hygiene, emotional symptoms like anxiety, depressions, or withdrawal, and financial or medical neglect. Observing interaction between the elder and caregiver can also provide important clues. Treatment and intervention focus on ensuring elder safety, reducing caregiver stress, and providing necessary support. Interventions may include caregiver stress relief through respite care, counseling, or support groups, and offering additional resources such as home health services, legal assistance, or financial guidance. In severe or persistent cases, it may be necessary to consider the temporary or permanent removal of the elders or the caregivers to ensure safety. Early identifications and coordinated approach help protect the elder while addressing the underlying cause of abuse. Questions. Is the following true or false? Adults who were abused as children are more likely to abuse their own child. True. The tendency for adults to raise children in the same way they were raised perpetrates the cycle of family violence. Adults who were victims of abuse as children frequently abuse their own children. Rape is a perpetration of sexual intercourse with a person against their will and without consent. It often involves overcoming the victims through the force, threats, fear of force, or by using drugs or intoxicants to impair the judgment. Rape is considered both a crime of violence and an act of humiliations, as it uses sexual means to assert power and control over the victim. A person may also be considered a victim of rape if they cannot exercise rational judgment due to age, disability, intoxications, or other impairments. Legally, only slight penetrations is necessary to constitute the act, meaning that the severity of physical contact does not affect its classifications as rape. Rape can be committed by strangers, which accounts for approximately 28% of cases, but more often involves acquaintances, intimate partners, married individuals, or people of the same sex. A common form is date rape, also called as acquaintance rape, where the perpetrator is known to the victim. Rape is a highly underreported crime as victims many fear stigma, retaliations, or disbelief. Most incidents occurs in or near the victim's neighborhood, frequently inside or close to the home, highlighting that sexual violence often happens in familiar or seemingly safe environment rather than by strangers in public places. Research indicates that most rape are premeditated, meaning the perpetrator plans the attack in advance rather than acting impulsively. While sexual violence is often associated with female victims, male rape is significantly under-acknowledged and underreported. Social stigma, fear or disbelief, and lack of awareness contribute to the low reporting rates among male victims, making it hidden but serious issue. Recognizing this aspect is important for providing appropriate support, interventions, and legal protections for all the survivors, regardless of gender. It is generally accepted that rape is not primarily a sexual crime, but rather an act of power, control, and dominations, often intended to inflict pain or punishment on the victim. According to feminist theory, women have historically been treated as objects for aggressions, reinforcing social and cultural patterns that contribute to sexual violence. During an assault, the primary motivation of the victim is often simply to survive rather than resist or fight back. Rape frequently results in severe physical or psychological trauma, including injuries, post-traumatic stress, anxiety, depression, and long-term emotional scars. Although treatment and support for survivors have improved, societal myths and misconceptions persist, such as the belief that a woman can provoke rape by her behavior, dress, or actions. So, dispelling these myths is essential for effective prevention support and justice for victims. Assessment of a rape victim begins with a thorough physical examinations, which not only address the medical needs but also the preserved evidence for legal purposes. The victim is encouraged to provide a description of what happened, and the rape kits and standard rape protocols are used to collect and document evidence systematically. Treatment and intervention focus first on providing immediate support and ensuring the victim's safety. Education about common reactions, coping strategies, and available resources is essential to empower the survivor and give control back to the victim. Medical care may include prophylactic treatment for sexually transmitted infections and emergency contraception to prevent pregnancy. Psychological support involves counseling and supported therapy, helping the victim process the trauma, regain the sense of safety, and begin recovery. Multidisciplinary approach ensures survivors receive comprehensive care, medical, emotional, and legal. School violence includes a wide range of harmful behaviors such as homicide, suicide, theft, and other violence crime that occurs within the educational settings. Common form of aggressions in school includes bullying, ostracism, and hazing, which have significant emotional and psychological effects on the children and young adults. Victims may experience anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, and decreased academic performance, while perpetrator may also struggle with behavioral and social issues. Violence can also occur with a larger societal scale, such as acts of terrorism, which impact entire communities and contribute to the widespread fear and trauma. So, understanding the causes, the effects, and prevention strategies for both school and community violence is critical for creating safer environments and support mental health. Questions. Which of the following statement about rape is most accurate? So what letter is your answer? Yes, the answer is B. Most rapes are premeditated. So rape under reported crime requires only slight penetrations of the vulva. Full erection or ejaculation is not necessary. Provocative duress leading to rape is a myth. So when caring for a victims of abuse, nurses must be first aware of their own beliefs and biases, ensuring personal feelings do not interfere with professional care. It is important to contain any feeling of horror or revulsions and instead focus on the client's immediate needs. Nurses should validate the client's feeling, showing empathy and understanding without judgment. As part of the routine assessment, all women should be asked about abuse in a sensitive and supportive manner, helping the client focus on the present, their safety, needs, and coping strategies. So this can be reduce the anxiety and empower them to regain a sense of control and over their situations. So in conclusions, abuse and violence, whether directed at children, women, older adults, or within the community, are complex issues with far-reaching physical, emotional, and social consequences. Effective nursing care requires early recognitions, thorough assessment, and compassionate, non-judgmental interventions. So nurses play a critical role in ensuring the safety, supporting the victims, advocating for their rights, and connecting them with appropriate resources. By understanding the dynamics of abuse, addressing the personal biases, and applying evidence-based strategies, healthcare professionals can help our victims heal, regain control, and break the cycle of violence, ultimately fostering safer individuals, families, and communities. So that is our topic for abuse and violence. Thank you for listening.